I'm Diana Chang. I'm the managing partner of the Sydney office of Clifford Chance. Clifford Chance is a leading global law firm. It's been in Australia just over 5 years. We consider that to be a successful business, it's pretty important for us to field the best team. So one of our strategic priorities has been to ensure that we identify the broadest range of people who will provide us with access to wide perspectives and experiences. We're also committed to improving our processes for recruitment, developing and mentoring our people. We operate in a wide range of markets, cultures and languages, so we've experienced changes, as have our clients. Really, that's helped us adapt to all the changes to build our business. We think that change should be embraced, in particular innovation. One of the things that I'm happy to talk about today is really our initiatives on diversity and inclusion, and also how we've managed change in what has been quite a complex environment for us to operate in, not only in Australia but globally.
I was wondering if you could tell us your experiences about implementing changes within your firm.
So I think more locally, I mentioned Clifford Chance arrived in this market just over 5 years ago through a merger with two boutique law firms. I was a founding partner of one. I think one of the important things that I learned through that process was I think to be open to the fact that merging two organizations, one big, one small, would have lots of positives, and that was my experience. It was a bit of a daunting experience, but I think any change, and I think that's a mantra that I suggest, that not to be afraid of change, be prepared to be surprised by the positives. So one of the things that we experienced was really the structures and processes that Clifford Chance offered, because it sort of had built up a very successful business globally, was really being very attuned to their clients' interests. So the processes such as how do you manage conflicts was seamless. And in a global business, being efficient and dealing with clients' interests is paramount. Another key issue was communication. Change is often viewed with some apprehension by staff. So active communication, so that they're not concerned by new technology, processes, demands on the way they work, is quite important, and patience.
So, how did your staff react to the decision to merge and to the process of merger?
I think excitement a little bit, and apprehension. Excitement about the opportunities that it would provide, and apprehension about what it would mean on a daily basis to the way we worked. The latter was really easily addressed immediately, because I think culture is quite important to any organization. And I was extremely comfortable that the culture was, matched the Clifford Chance culture, and that's proven to be the case. And changes in processes really, I think it's communicating that it's really to improve the way we work, but also to have it as a two-way street, that if there's any feedback about whether those changes are really appropriate to the particular office, to be receptive to that feedback.
Was there any pushback on the change that you had to address, and how did you address that?
No, I didn't experience any pushback. I think it was pretty important to be quite open, and to the extent, for example, if there were problems with technology, it was to say, well, be patient. These things need time to change, and if you've got feedback, we'll pass it on to those who are sort of implementing these changes for us.
Okay. And can you tell me about your firm's diversity policy?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we consider that having the best teams is really critical to our business being successful. So some of the things that we've done is we measure our progress on things like gender diversity and ethnicity, and we're quite transparent about how we're progressing. So as a firm, for example, we've had a stated ambition to have 30% of our partners female. So far globally, we've improved. We're now 18%. In Asia Pac, we're 24%. In Australia, pleasingly, 1/3 of the partnership are female. In our last recruitment of partners, 25% were female. Ethnicity is also measured. We think it's quite important. We are a little bit behind, but I think we're looking at things about how to collect data. Data collection is quite critical for working out how do we improve that aspect of diversity.
Could you just elaborate for me in relation to the policy that deals with improving ethnicity mix within the partnership? How do you go about doing that?
Well, first of all, we're quite public with our stated ambitions, and some of the things we do. I think I was asked about our blind CV policy. That was a policy which was introduced really in our London office in direct response to a UK study which showed that a large proportion of the profession in the UK were trained at Oxbridge. So obviously it's a bigger market. To address that, they introduced a blind CV so that the interviewers had no visibility as to where the candidates studied. That means that there's less unconscious bias in the interview process, and there's encouragement for the applicants to really demonstrate their difference to the interviewers. The effect of that policy has been tremendous. We've seen a 30% improvement in the range of institutions that our graduates come from. And I think, we'll continue to measure that policy now. That's been applied to London. We don't think it's necessary for us to apply it in smaller markets because we're acutely aware that we actually need to attract people from diverse backgrounds, whether it's educational institutions, gender, ethnicity, etc.
Any questions?
Thank you, Diana. Can I just ask you to pick up on two concepts that personally I'm struggling with, is the concept of cultural fit. You mentioned culture earlier, and the diversity inclusion and the stated aim that a successful business requires the best team, and diversity is one way of achieving that. We're still seeing articles being published by recruiters, for example, giving tips to graduates on how to fit culturally. And some of the pushback is saying, well, isn't that the opposite to diversity? How can culture of an organisation and diversity work together?
I think it's being open to the fact that everyone is different. I mean, our society is different. And whilst there are certain things that expectations, obviously, in delivering service to clients, there are certain standards that we have to apply, excellence in service. But it's just being open to the fact that cultural diversity means that you're going to bring different perspectives. You're not going to be imposing your view of doing things. So the way we can assist clients in complex situations is having diverse views. And that can come from, coming from a different cultural background or experience. So I personally haven't seen any difficulty in our organisation of any mismatch in trying to address our, aim to have a diverse workforce with imposing particular cultural norms. For us, the cultural norm is one team, working together as one team, because ultimately our role is really to serve clients, and working as one cohesive team with that stated aim is really what drives the success of our business.
In the when the Clifford Chance UK merged with a local firm, what kind of support did you find that you needed to give employees here to upskill them, I suppose, for working with this, in a new international environment?
It was really easy because we had colleagues in our other offices who were very willing to introduce themselves to our team, and so very quickly there were lots of ways that we were able to interact with our other offices, whether it was face-to-face off-sites in other countries, or partners and lawyers coming to our office and really introducing some of the developments and learnings that they had. So there was plenty of opportunity to do that, so that very quickly our staff felt part of the Clifford Chance network. And we've really introduced quite early on mobility. Part of I think, what marks our practice is we encourage mobility between offices, because that gives our lawyers exposure to different markets and experiences. So we've had in our office in Sydney lawyers from London, New York, Europe, Asia, and likewise we sent our lawyers to those different markets and quite early in their career. So that really helps. And so there's lots of ways we continue to, and even being on phone calls, emails, particular practice groups, interest groups, etc.
Has technology been an issue when it comes to implementing change and
yes, absolutely.
educating your lawyers?
So part of the merger was really being integrated from a technology point of view, and it took some time. So I think I talked about being patient. So part of overcoming that was finding other ways of communicating with the rest of the network, whether it's getting on conference calls or using the VC or using emails. So we are now fully integrated from a technology point of view, and that's been fantastic.
Was there any resistance to the technological changes that took place, or did you find that it was fairly seamless?
It wasn't seamless because it took some time. And I think moving to new systems, there's always resistance because everyone gets used to what they're used to. But I think if you, sell it as improving and helping us be more efficient, after a while, I think everyone gets used to it.
Your firm has set up a diversity and inclusion committee.
Yes.
And could you just explain to us the composition of that committee and how it goes about doing its work?
So one of the things we do is obviously measure our metrics, so the gender, ethnicity. We encourage training. So, for example, there is unconscious bias training for partners who are involved in the partner elevation. They help drive initiatives in terms of, collaborating with clients on really promoting the importance of diversity inclusion. They encourage networks like the Women's Network. Whilst there's been a lot of focus on gender diversity, one of the things that we've shown some leadership in is other aspects of diversity, LGBTI, for example. So we have something called an ARCUS Alliance.
Sorry, is that?
ARCUS Alliance. So that's really showing our support for our colleagues who are LGBTI, and also being champions for them, and really to reinforce that there should be equal opportunity for all diverse aspects of a society. So that's one example, and obviously disabilities another. So it's really, I think, showing leadership in different ways, including training and also client collaboration. We find that our clients consider, as we do, that diversity inclusion is very important. So we find opportunities to collaborate with clients to really educate our staff and also, I think, the community.
Given the experiences that you've gone through, do you have any suggestions or recommendations for the profession or the Law Society or both?
I think the business case for diversity inclusion is, to me, a no-brainer. I think we now are already seeing studies which show that it has a positive impact on improving business performance. So I think as a profession, we need to show our colleagues that it's not just doing the right thing. It is doing the right thing, but it actually makes business sense. So I think being a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is really showing leadership, helping our colleagues understand that you don't have to do very much to address what I think is an important issue. Really being part of the dialogue which is already happening in the business community, I think is quite important. And I think I haven't addressed questions of change. Technology is really, and I know some of the other speakers today will talk about the importance of technology. It's quite scary, particularly for senior practitioners, of which I'm one. But I think what I've found is that if we accept that technology is here to stay, we realize it's actually going to help us be more efficient, and particularly for the younger members of the profession, making them understand they shouldn't be afraid, that it'll create greater opportunities for them. So really, I think as a profession, we need to help all levels of our profession develop other skills, the soft skills to respond to these changes. So whatever ways we can do that. I think the Law Society is already doing so much, but we need to communicate these very clear messages in a simple way, which makes our, I think, colleagues not be afraid of these changes.
This is not quite on topic, but can I ask you what your view is about the adaptability of young lawyers coming out of university to embrace the technology that law firms use? Are they quick to pick it up? Are they quick learners? Or is there a bit of a steep learning curve there?
I think they have lots to teach us. I'm so impressed. I've just been through the process of interviewing potential summer clerks, and so many of them are developing apps. So I think that they will embrace it, and I think what we need to do is to explain to them it doesn't mean that there's not going to be jobs for them, but I think what it means is that the work that they will do will be quite different from the work that I did as a graduate lawyer. And I think they will help us embrace technology and help us be more efficient.